This week on Supercars Talk, I don't even bother previewing the Gold Coast 600 because we've got too much other stuff to cover. Probably the biggest talking point of this week, which I consider it to be a storm in a teacup, has been whether Scotty should keep his Bathurst win because of what Fabian did under the safety car. Now, if you've been living under a rock, Fabian slowed down under the safety car because he was told to, backing up the field so he didn't have to double stack in the pits. I've seen a lot of people on the internet and that likening it to when Flavio with Renault and that, the whole Crashgate thing back in 2009, I think it was. No, it was actually 2008. If you don't know what that is, basically Fernando Alonso, who was their lead driver, he had a really bad qualifying at Singapore, and the night before the race they decided they were going to pull Fernando in for an early pit stop, and then have Nelson Piquet Jr. crash at a certain place on the track where they knew that there was going to be a safety car, a long safety car on that. Get him crashed deliberately, have the safety car on that, and then Fernando would pop out near the front somewhere. And Nelson was all part of the deal, and basically they said, okay, if you do this, you'll have a contract next year, all good kind of thing. And so he went crashed into the wall. It worked a little bit too good. Fernando actually went on to win the race, and it all came to a head. There's a few people that would be like, "Phew, that was a bit convenient at the time," and then it all came kind of out the middle of next year when they fired Nelson, and he said, "Well, screw you guys, I'm going to tell them what we did in Singapore," and basically never had a job again. I think he went and did Formula E and doing some Brazilian stock car things. So yeah, pretty much never had a job again. And Flavio got banned for life, I think. He was the team manager or the team principal, whatever. And Pat Simmons, who was like the race director or something like that, supposedly Fernando had nothing to do with it. He got to keep his win in that. Anyway, people have been likening the Coulthard thing to that. Very different, very different. That was a full premeditated. They decided this the night before. It was all planned out. This is a lap crash. This is a corner crash. All of that kind of stuff. Really not the right thing to do. Whereas the Coulthard thing, I think, that was a bit of taking advantage of the situation. And plenty of people before have slowed down to not double stack. Coulthard just probably went a bit to the extreme, maybe not slow down that much. Anyway, apparently Scotty gets to keep his Bathurst win. The team have been fined $250,000, $100,000 of that suspended, and I think they got docked. The Coulthard got kicked out of the results, so instead of finishing sixth, he finishes last. So whatever points they lost there, and I think they lost 300 team championship points for it. It's drop in the ocean. Realistically, this weekend, Scott's leading championship. I think it's 622 points, 3 rounds to go. So after this weekend, if he scores, or as long as he's within 22 points of Shane over the weekend, Scott's champion with 2 rounds to go. So overall, I don't think it's really going to hurt them that much. And really, for a team like that, people are saying they're spending $20 million a year on the team, so $150,000 fine, drop in the ocean. If you said that to Rog, it's going to cost you $150,000 to win Bathurst. Well, and really, people are going to. Barry Ryan's been having a big cry about it during the week. It's not $150,000 to win Bathurst, is it? It's now to avoid double stacking, it's going to cost you $150,000, which. That's a big penalty to avoid double stacking. I tell you what, Coulthard's going to be double stacked to the hilt at Gold Coast now. So that's basically my Gold Coast preview. Coulthard, you're going to be double stacking. We'll leave it at that. Now, why I don't have time to do a Gold Coast preview, I don't want to bore you with my voice for too long this week, and there's a lot to cover here because the teams had to enter the championship by last Friday. So, yeah, a lot of toing and froing happened during the week. There's still a bit more to play out, I think. The big news from it, Gary Rogers has pulled out. Surprising, one of his licenses is already gone. There was a little bit of confusion over to actually which home that went to. Well, kind of doesn't matter so much in the end, but one of his licenses is gone, the other one's going back to V8 Supercars, and there's still one in play. But anyway, we'll get into that in a minute. So I'm not sure if this is the last we've heard of this. There is you can kind of, sort out your licenses and that after this deadline. But yeah, Gary Rogers might be out. It's not actually a net effect to the amount of cars on the grid next year. It looks like there's still going to be 24. There's 23 entries at the moment. Looks like there's going to be 24 at the end of the day. But it's sad to see that not only the Kellys have definitely gone down to 2 cars, and they're going to Mustangs. So we've lost 2 Kelly cars and both of the Gary Rogers cars. That's not good news for the category, but it's not all doom and gloom because essentially we've got 4 new entries for the year to fill all those gaps. So the first license that we heard switching hands was the Matt Stone Racing. They've been running under Jason Bright's license for a few years. They've been leasing it. You're only allowed to lease a license for 2 years. Then you either someone else has to lease it or you have to kind of on-sell it. So the logical thing that we could kind of see was that Matt Stone was going to buy Jason Bright's license off him. In the end, it's actually changed a bit. I'm not sure. I've just got Daddy Smith. So Jack Smith's father, he's been doing some wildcards and that for Brad Jones Racing during the year. He's bought the license. It's going to be a 4th Brad Jones Racing car for next year. So that's kind of 1 extra car, I suppose. Then the next one, so Matt Stone Racing, they need a license. I'm not sure on all the mechanics of all this. Originally, everyone said that they'd bought a Kelly one. Then the Gary Rogers kind of came up. Anyway, Matt Stone Racing, not 1, but they got 2 licenses in all of this. So they're going to have a primary car, and the talk is that their second car is going to be shared between 2 drivers, probably 2 young drivers bringing budget. Yeah, there's rules against that at the moment. This will be interesting to see what happens. A few people are against it, and obviously Matt Stone's one of the people for it. Basically, he's trying to say that if we can bring in a couple of young drivers that have got half a season budget, we can fill a car for the whole season, and it kind of brings up the grid count. I like that idea, especially if it brings more cars on the grid, and it is an easier way to get some young guys into the category to get noticed. So the other small team doing an expansion is Team 18's picked up another one of the wrecks. Now, this is interesting as well because everyone was saying earlier on in the year that Charlie was getting a second license so that James Courtney was coming on board. And James and Charlie were friends from, when they won the championship together at DJR. This is interesting now because they've got a second license, and where's the second driver coming from if they haven't got Courtney on the books? That's all interesting. And of course, the Courtney thing, I didn't cover this in the Bathurst because of it being Bathurst. But then you've got this Team Sydney thing happening with Techno and James Courtney. So what's happened is Sydney, they want a team. They want to build a big racing kind of hub there at Sydney Motorsports Park. So kind of the government and that have, they're funding a factory at least for the Sydney team to start up. I think next year they're going to be running out of just a factory somewhere while a proper purpose-built premises gets built down next to Sydney Motorsport Park. The team that's going to be there is Techno is going to move down. I assume they're going to get a new car, or 2 new cars, because it's going to be a 2-car team. So there's money coming in from Techno. Apparently Rod Salmon, who's a GT racer, he's putting in some money towards it all. James Courtney's going to be the driver, and they're looking for a young driver for the second car. Apparently Mr. Adderton, who's the big guy behind Boost Mobile, who's pulled the pin on GRM, and because he's not happy with the category and whatever other crap that he's been spinning to keep his name in the news all week. Apparently he could be involved. Richie might be coming up. Definitely hasn't got a GRM drive next year by the looks of things, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of all of that. So Friday's entries kind of brought up more questions than what there was answers. We had the big one, obviously Kellys are going to Mustangs next year. What surprised me most was that they're going to build their own engines. So basically the whole program's still going to be in-house. And that was one of the things that they said about going to the Mustang, was that they could build their own panels and all that. Thought they were probably going to do some kind of lease agreement with either the Dick Johnson team's engine builder, I think it's Mostec, or maybe lease some off Tickford, something like that. No, they're going to build their own. Looks like driver-wise, I mean, Rick Kelly will still be there, and I'm hearing Andre Heimgartner is going to be the second driver, with obviously the other two being given, DCMs at the end of the season. So then if we run through the field quickly, locked in, we've got at Tickford, we've basically got Cam Waters and Will Davison. The other two cars are up for grabs. It's looking, marriage of convenience. Lee Holdsworth might be staying, and Jack LeBrock filling in the vacating seat there, which that's Chaz Mostert going to Walkinshaw. Walkinshaw, they've been talking big changes for next year. I think that's probably that we got two new drivers, and Adam De Boer's coming across as, he'll be the lead engineer or something like that. He's Chaz Mostert's engineer at the moment. I can't see Chaz wanting to come across with something like that without Adam. So that's not confirmed, but I think everyone's keeping a bit quiet on that so they don't get kicked out of the team until the end of the year. Penske, both drivers, sponsor, everything's locked in. They're fine. Triple Eight, same deal there. Everyone's locked in. Obviously the team Sydney, we've got James Courtney's locked in there. Possibly Richie as the second driver. Team 18, we've got Mark Winterbottom, and Irwin was a few-year deal there. Who knows for the second seat? And the only kind of rumour that I've heard is that maybe Simona has enough money to go there. That's the only kind of name I've heard linked with that seat. Erebus, they're all locked in. Decade Dave and Anton De Pasquale are there. Matt Stone Racing, now they've got two seats to fill. Three, depending on whether they get this deal for the two drivers in the second car. I think we're going to see Tim Slade there. And I have heard a bit of a rumour about Scott Pye going there, but I've also heard possibly Scott Pye doing the Brad Jones Racing, which there Nick Percat's locked in, but then the other, well, obviously the Smith license is Jack Smith's going to be driving there, I imagine. But then whether Macaulay gets a call up again in the Blanchard license, and then who's kind of getting the second seat there. There's, as I said, more questions than answers at the moment, but I'm sure over the next few weeks, more will come to light. So that's my Gold Coast preview. It's all pretty normal. We go around, race around the streets. Scotty will probably lock up the championship this week. Maybe we might hear some driver announcements. Until next time, I'll see you later.
Put away your inhibitions. Let the beast in you just get loose. We all young, wild, and